Hey there, it's Cindy Thomas, your career coach and strategist. The Insiders Career Club was recently rated in the top 20 job search podcasts by FeedSpot. Check out their website link. It'll be in the podcast notes. Now let's meet our special guest. Our special guest today is Dr. Emily Levy. She's an education expert, and she's the founder and director of EBL Coaching, a specialized tutoring program which offers individualized one-on-one home, virtual, and on-site instruction using research-based multisensory techniques. Now, she won a Westinghouse Science and Talent Award for her research study, and that resulted in her developing an alternative strategy for teaching reading comprehension. She's also an author, and we're going to share more about that. Let's welcome her into the show. Emily, welcome into the Insiders Career Club podcast. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me today.
Oh, I'm looking forward to the conversation. I think it's going to be a great one. So let's just go ahead and dive in.
Great.
Why don't you share with us about the work that you are doing now?
Sure. Well, I am the founder and director of EBL Coaching, which is a one-on-one tutoring program for students who have special education needs. We're based in the New York and New Jersey areas where we do in-person tutoring, but we actually do virtual tutoring nationwide and worldwide as well, which has been really exciting. And we work with kids as young as the preschool level all the way up through the adult level, using research-based multisensory techniques to help them develop core skills in reading, writing, reading comprehension, math, and study and executive functioning skills.
Okay. So when you're thinking about your student population, are you finding that there are more children? Are you seeing an increase in the children that need help with reading and writing skills?
I do. I think certainly the pandemic was a very big setback for a lot of kids who were not in school or who didn't really receive effective instruction. And as a result, missed so many of those core foundations academically. But I also think in general, there are just so many kids that are struggling with their basic academic skills and really benefit from that extra support.
Do you have any theories on why that is?
Well, I think that there are more diagnoses that I'm seeing of students who have a disability, ADHD, autism. And that really could be because there's more awareness now. I think more kids are being diagnosed and evaluated. I think there's also less of a stigma surrounding it. It's okay to have dyslexia or another type of learning disability. And when you get that diagnosis, there's so many great tools and resources available to students. So it's actually a good thing. It's not negative at all. It's a benefit to be able to access those tools and resources.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you. What would you say is the most effective academic strategy for treating and for creating, not treating, an inclusive classroom environment for children with special needs to have success?
Well, I believe a multisensory approach is the most effective methodology and approach for teaching special education students. There's also a lot of research that backs that. And basically what that means is rather than just using one modality, like listening to a teacher or just say working out of a workbook, we engage the senses simultaneously, the visual, the auditory, the tactile, kinesthetic modality as we teach students new concepts.
Okay, great. What is the age range of special needs clients that you work with?
We start as young as age 3, so really kind of preschool age kids who really need that early foundational skills development. And then we actually go all the way through 12th grade and beyond. We have many college students and many adults that we work with as well. So quite a wide spectrum.
Well, working with children so young at age 3, I would think that would give them a boost when they do start school so that they're not going to be so far behind if they have some special needs with regard to learning.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many kids that start kindergarten and they have no skills whatsoever. They can't identify letters or sounds or write any letters or numbers. So having a little jump start with those early foundations definitely makes a big difference when they start school.
Okay, that's almost kind of hard to believe that there are because you see all these kids that are reading at a 5th grade level and they're 3 years old or 4 years old, and then to hear that there are children that are starting kindergarten with basically at ground zero, right? That's kind of surprising to me in this day and age.
Yeah, so I will say kindergartners reading at a fifth grade level is not the norm. There are some kids that read at a high level. In general, in kindergarten, there tends to be a very wide spectrum of skills. There are some non-readers and then some more reading chapter books. But in general, as I mentioned, when kids start with no foundational skills, it's a real struggle now getting through kindergarten and beyond.
Okay. Do you find that children that are, and this makes sense, so it might not even be I won't say valid because every question is valid, but children that are coming from a family with other siblings, that they acclimate much easier than those that don't?
I think it really depends on the child. I think socially it might be a little bit easier to acclimate, but academically, I think it just really completely depends on the child, especially if they have some type of a special education need.
Okay. How do you approach designing and implementing individualized education plans to meet the unique needs of each child? Especially if they're in the classroom setting, right? They're not just off on their own.
Right. So in terms of having an IEP created, typically there's an evaluation that's done first. It can be done for free within a public school system, where a child usually will have academic testing and IQ testing done in order to gauge their whole profile. And then from that evaluation, if they qualify for an IEP, that basically delineates what their disability is and then any services that they should also receive, whether it's speech therapy, occupational therapy, specialized tutoring, physical therapy, whatever the services may be that are appropriate for that child given their unique needs.
Okay. What advice would you give to the parents of these children on how to collaborate effectively with whatever the program is that is designed for them to be able to bring that into the home to continue to support it?
Sure. Well, I'm a believer that parents will always be their child's best advocate. So in the beginning of the school year, it's really just a great idea to set up a team meeting with their child's teacher, with any other service providers like a speech therapist and so on, to really discuss their child, what their profile is, which strategies have worked for them in the past, which strategies have not worked for them, and then to really set up a plan for regularly communicating with the teacher and with those service providers. Because sometimes, and I've seen this many times, for a long stretch of time, a child might be doing really well, and then all of a sudden they hit a wall and they start to tank and their skills start to really fall. And sometimes the parents don't know about that right away. It's not until parent-teacher conference or sometimes towards the end of the year that they find out about it. So always better to be proactive, stay in touch with teachers and therapists, and really not be reactive, but be on top of what's going on with their child.
Okay. And how do you leverage technology to enhance the learning experience with these children?
Well, many of the students that we work with have assistive technology devices that they have been granted, whether it's a program for reading, a program for math. So they have tools that they are able to integrate. We have some of our own. In fact, I've recently been working on developing a wonderful writing software program where students will learn a systematic approach for how to write sentences, simple paragraphs, extended paragraphs, and so on. And then they're given direct feedback and scoring on their writing, that they can see areas where they did really well and then areas that could use some improvement. So that combination of technology and then, of course, the human support really makes a big difference.
Sounds great. Being in the workforce for many years, you would see the generation of writing skills, with younger generation with the abbreviations and, not using proper English conventions. And so you think, oh, gee, maybe I ought to do that in high school.
Right? It's a little scary. And I think kids are so used to texting each other and using colloquial abbreviations and not using punctuation marks that they transfer that into the classroom. So it's really important that they still continue to learn how to strengthen their writing skills.
Absolutely. Because, sometimes you see it come through and you're like, what is this? And we all text, right? We all text. You want to abbreviate or whatever, but you have to realize the setting that you're in.
Definitely.
So, Emily, let's talk a little bit about why you decided to focus in on this as a career. Tell me a little bit about that.
Happy to. Well, it actually goes way back to my childhood. I grew up in Florida where my mother had founded a school for students with learning disabilities. So I spent so much of my childhood working at her school, observing kids, working with kids, observing teachers, and really seeing what an incredible difference it makes to have the right approach, the right methodologies in place when working with special education students. With all of that said, I decided initially that I wanted to carve my own path and not kind of follow what my mother was doing. So I went to Brown University for my undergraduate degree. And then I did finance of all things for 2 years. Great learning experience. But I quickly realized that it wasn't for me, wasn't my calling. And I just remembered how fulfilling and how gratifying it was to work with these children and to work in that school setting and see them thrive. That ended up making a big pivot in my life. I received my master's degree in special education and later my doctorate degree in education. And I just started personally working one-on-one with students who had various types of special education needs using this multisensory approach. And it was just so fulfilling to see the changes that I was able to make with these kids, with their academics, with their self-confidence, and on so many levels that it just organically started to grow what is now EBL coaching, where I've brought on many experts in different skill areas, age areas, and have organically grown the program to what it is today.
Okay. So why don't you talk about your program a little more?
Sure. So our specialty, like I mentioned, is one-on-one tutoring. We work with students who have all types of special education needs, including different learning disabilities like dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia, ADHD, autism, speech and language challenges, executive functioning challenges, really all types of special education needs. And everything that we do is very much catered to the needs of each student in terms of the methods that we use. So we always start with an initial evaluation to gauge the student's academic skills and to help identify which methodologies would be best for them. If they have an IEP or any prior evaluations, we always find it helpful to review those as well to really give us an overall picture of who that child is. And then from there, we match the student with a specialist who we feel would be a great fit, both in terms of their expertise, their personality, logistics of where the student lives or what the schedule is that they're looking for. And then the tutoring begins from there. And we're constantly tweaking it based on how students respond. We pull from about 22 different research-based techniques, depending on what's right for each student, to really cater that instruction to their needs. And then, like I alluded to earlier, for the past probably 5-6 years now, we've been expanding our virtual platform where we've really been able to help kids, not just in this New York, New Jersey area, but again, students nationwide and worldwide who may not have access in their local geographic area to this kind of specialized tutoring. So it's just been really exciting to be able to help so many other kids in so many different geographic areas.
That's very interesting because just in my mind, and obviously I'm not a specialist, but to have children that you are working with virtually, I would think would be a bigger challenge than the one-on-one. So tell me how you deal with that and how easy is it to see that you are making a difference, that it's working for them.
Sure. So we've developed a lot of resources and technology to help facilitate the virtual tutoring sessions. Sometimes we'll even mail a packet of materials and manipulatives and workbooks to the student that the tutor will also have for the virtual sessions. We also use a lot of online tools like online magnetic tiles and whiteboards and colored highlighters to really help engage the students. Of course, there are some students that really need that in-person instruction. Surprisingly, a large number of kids who really benefit incredibly well from the virtual sessions also.
Okay. So, Emily, do the virtual sessions work with the younger children, and how involved other parents are? How involved are parents with them at that younger age where they may not be able to, obviously a 3-year-old is not going to be able to set up the computer, right? So can you talk about the differences in dealing with the younger as opposed to the older children?
Sure. So again, every child is different. And I think that some kids are really naturally able to log on their own, set themselves up, more the older students than the younger students. I would say usually upper elementary and above they're so tech savvy, even more than I am sometimes, that they know how to work through them and how to get things going on their own. I would say the younger ones often do need a parent to either get them started or sometimes be there with them for the sessions. Sometimes the parents even like being there for the sessions because then they can see what the child and the student worked on and what they can then do at home to reinforce the instruction. So again, it really depends on the child, but we always kind of cater to the environment that works best for each student.
Okay, great. Thank you. What are some effective techniques for managing behavior? I can't talk this morning. Behavioral changes in the classroom. I should have had that cup of tea.
Okay, that's okay. A lot of kids will have behavioral intervention plans who have behavioral difficulties, which kind of outlines strategies for how to manage different types of behaviors that they may exhibit. Sometimes there's reward systems that are built in to reinforce positive behaviors. So again, that's sort of part of that evaluation process of identifying triggers, identifying behaviors, and then kind of solutions that go along with them.
How can educators and parents work together to promote social skills and peer interactions with children with special needs?
Well, again, there's a lot of great social groups out there that are really incredibly effective for kids who need that, especially kids who are on the autism spectrum. They tend to really benefit from that. It's really targeted to teaching them strategies how to build those social interactions. So those are really great tools and a great way to build social skills.
Okay. And special needs children are enveloped in regular grades. They're not set off in a special needs class. Is that correct?
Well, that depends on the child. The idea is we always want to have the least restrictive environment as possible. So there are many kids that are taught, that have special education needs, that are taught within a mainstream setting. But if that's too challenging for them and they can't thrive in that environment, then they may be in a separate setting or they may be pulled out for certain classes. So that really kind of depends on the severity of their needs.
Okay. And how is your team and or yourself working together, collaborating with the on-site teacher that's in the classroom, teaching everyone to make sure that your special needs child is thriving and working well throughout the day, basically?
Or, we find that the more we can work as a team, the better. So as long as the families are okay with it, we really find it effective to reach out to teachers, reach out to other service providers, and really set up plans for communicating on a regular basis, sharing strategies that are working, and really making sure the student is constantly progressing.
Okay, great. What would you say are key considerations when preparing children with special needs for transitions, such as moving to a new school or entering adulthood or any other changes that are going to be big in their life? How do you help them prepare for that?
I would say the more that we can minimize that element of surprise, the better. So exposing them to the environment that they may be in, maybe introducing them to some kids that they might be in if they're switching to a new school. So really giving them as much exposure as possible before just having them start in that new place with new people, a new building and all of that. So really trying to kind of that transition.
Okay. And what are some of the best methods that parents can advocate for their children that have special needs?
Well, there's one method called the Orton-Gillingham method, which is incredibly effective for students who have dyslexia or language-based learning disability in terms of teaching them how to read and write. So if they can get that approach in school, it's really incredible. But in general, just advocating for that multisensory approach to teaching so they're not just sitting in a classroom listening to a teacher, but really having those senses engaged is just such an incredible way to teach students with special education needs.
Okay. And I would imagine that the parent and the teacher would have set up some kind of check-in regularly rather than, it's not aligning with what the rest of the class is doing, where you have your open houses where parents really aren't engaged so much with the teacher, but they have regular meetings with the educator.
Absolutely. The more engagement, the more communication, the more check-ins and meetings, the better. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Here's one I hadn't planned. I was hoping I wouldn't have to ask you, but I heard about the executive order this morning to disband the Department of Education. Can you talk about how vital that Department of Education is and what effects is it going to have not being there? and not having the support from it.
Well, I'm not an expert in this. I'm not quite sure it'll pass through Congress. Again, I'm not an expert in this sort of the aspect of it. But I think what may end up happening is that there'll be more money channeled to the states so that the states can decide what's best for their students within that state rather than the federal Department of Education. So it may end up being okay for students if they were getting the right support that makes sense for their state. But again, I think there's a lot of variables, and I think time will tell to see how that all pans out.
Yeah, I'm really concerned about that because, giving the money to the state, there's no oversight. They can decide to use the money somewhere else. And with an executive order, I think it just goes into effect, period, unless the states sue, put everything in court again, like that's happening with some of the other departments. So, yeah, we will see. But fingers crossed it all works out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's talk about some of your books because you've written 2, right?
3 different book series.
Okay. Yeah. And you're working on something else now, right?
We're working on this software program. So which kind of actually integrates some of the workbooks, but from a software standpoint, more of a tech standpoint. But yeah, so I have 3 different workbook series. The first one is called Strategies for Study Success. And that teaches students specific strategies for reading, comprehension, writing, test taking, note taking, and executive functioning skills. The second workbook series is called the Flags and Stars Orton Gillingham Student Workbook Series, which is based on that method I described earlier. It's designed to help students develop their reading and spelling skills. And then the third workbook series is the Flags and Stars Multisensory Math Program, which is a multisensory approach to building foundational math skills, addition, subtraction, double-digit addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, fraction. So really those foundational math skills. And they're actually now being used at schools nationwide, and it's just been a great way to help more kids.
Wonderful. Okay. Well, if someone happens to have their children in a program, in a school program that maybe isn't using your book because maybe it's a private school, how can they find your books?
They can go to our website, which is eblcoaching.com. There's a workbooks tab. And within that, there's a description of each of the workbooks, lots of information about them, sample pages that they're welcome to take a look at.
Okay. And that's where they can also sign up, Emily, if they want to talk to you about getting their children in your program, in your coaching program?
It sure is. And I'd be happy to speak to them about their child anytime.
Oh, wonderful. We've already talked about that. So I was going to say, I was share about your EBL coaching, but we've already gone into that. Well, I am questioned out. You're probably going, yay, stop asking me questions.
Oh, gosh, it's such a great conversation. I really enjoyed everything we've spoken about.
It's really been educational for me as well. And I hope that listeners that have children that have one special need or another will really take some of this advice to heart that she shared, because it's really important for their children to be able to grow up, be able to learn and function within society.
Absolutely.
The information you shared was great, and I truly appreciate your time. I know we had it was hard for us to connect and find the time, but I'm glad that we did.
I am too. I'm so glad that it all worked out. It's really been a pleasure.
It's been my pleasure too. Thank you so much for sharing all of your insights with us, and have a great rest of the day.
Thank you so much. You too.
You're welcome. Did you enjoy the show? Well, keep listening, and don't forget to like us. If you've been laid off or downsized or need a career pivot, if you need resume help or to sharpen your interview skills, I can help you. Set up a complimentary 20-minute call with me on my website at www.insiderscareerclub.com. Until next time, may God bless you, keep you, and make his face to shine upon you. Take care.